In 2021, a family in Bakersfield, California signed a 25-year solar lease for $0 down. In 2024, they accepted a job offer in another state and tried to sell their house. They are still trying. This is why. In July 2025, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and quietly gutted the federal tax credit that made residential solar affordable for millions of American families. For homeowners buying or financing their own system, that window closed December 31, 2025. For lease and PPA contracts, the finance company retains access to a separate federal credit through 2027, but that benefit flows to them, not to you. Either way, the economic calculus has shifted permanently against the buyer. The industry has not recovered. It is collapsing. But the people selling you panels are not telling you that. They are still knocking on your door, they are still running the same ads, and they are still signing homeowners into the same contracts that have already financially destroyed hundreds of thousands of families across this country. Today, we are going to expose exactly how the residential solar industry turned a legitimate technology into the most sophisticated wealth extraction machine ever aimed at the American middle class. And we are going to show you the three situations where solar still makes sense, and the contract terms that separate a real investment from a financial trap. If a salesman has knocked on your door in the last 3 years to talk about solar, you probably heard some version of the same pitch. Lock in your electricity rate, own your power, stop paying the utility forever, the system pays for itself. It sounds like financial independence. It is not. What they are actually selling you is a 25-year financial instrument disguised as a home improvement. And the company that manufactures the pitch has spent more money engineering the sales process than engineering the panels. Here is what the residential solar market actually looks like behind the branding. A handful of large financiers dominated the residential solar finance market at its peak. Sunrun remains the largest residential solar installer in the country today, but two of its biggest competitors, SunPower and Sunnova, the first and second largest third-party ownership financiers respectively, have since collapsed. These are not energy companies. They are financial services companies that happen to install equipment on roofs. Their primary product is not electricity. Their primary product is a long-term contract secured against your home. SunPower filed for bankruptcy in 2024. Sunnova, the second largest residential solar finance company in the country, entered bankruptcy proceedings in 2025. The installer that put panels on your roof may no longer exist as a legal entity, but the lien on your home absolutely still exists. That is the trap. And most homeowners do not find out until they try to sell their house. To understand why so many homeowners are now financially paralyzed, you need to understand three specific mechanisms that the industry built into its business model. The first is the UCSC1 financing statement. When a solar company installs panels on your roof under a lease or a power purchase agreement, they file a document with your estate called a UCC1 financing statement. This document legally declares that the equipment on your roof is their property, not yours, and creates a filing that attaches to your property record. From that moment forward, your home has a UCC filing attached to it that can appear in title searches, complicate refinancing, and create significant friction in any sale. It is not a traditional mortgage lien, but it functions like one when you try to sell or refinance. A title company will find it. Depending on how the filing is written and which lender is involved, it can require subordination, transfer, or full buyout before the transaction closes. And resolving it means either paying off the remaining contract, transferring it to the buyer, or getting the company to remove it. When the company that filed that UCC1 goes bankrupt, the authority to remove it transfers to a bankruptcy trustee whose job is to recover value for creditors, not to help you close a real estate transaction on your timeline. The lien does not disappear with the company. It stays on your title, attached to a contract that references an entity that may no longer exist in any meaningful operational form. Title companies and real estate professionals increasingly report complications involving solar UCC filings during sales and refinances across the Sun Belt. Deals are falling apart at closing. Sellers are being forced to escrow tens of thousands of dollars to resolve encumbrances before buyers' lenders will fund the purchase. You bought what you thought was a home improvement. You got a financial instrument that can delay your closing, force costly buyouts, and in the worst cases, kill the deal entirely. The second mechanism is the escalator clause. Most residential solar contracts, whether a lease or a power purchase agreement, include an annual price escalator. The typical rate is between 2.9% and 3.9% per year, compounded annually over 20 to 25 years. In year one, the math looks good. You are paying less per kilowatt hour than the utility charges. The salesman shows you a chart where your fixed solar rate stays flat while the utility rate climbs. You save money. What the chart does not show is what happens in year 12 or year 15, when the escalator has been compounding for over a decade. Well, in many contracts, by year 15, the homeowner is paying more per kilowatt hour for solar than they would have paid to just stay on the grid. The crossover point, the moment the contract becomes worse than the utility, is buried in the financial model and never shown to the customer. A contract that starts at 12 cents per kilowatt hour with a 3.9% escalator will reach 21 cents per kilowatt hour by year 15. In historically lower rate states like parts of the Southeast and the Midwest, where utility rates have typically ranged between 12 and 16 cents per kilowatt hour, that crossover is not hypothetical. It is a mathematical certainty built into the contract. That homeowner is paying a premium for the privilege of having panels on their roof that they do not own. The third mechanism is the OBBBA cliff. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed in July 2025, phased out the 30% federal investment tax credit for residential solar installations. For homeowners who purchased systems outright or financed them with a solar loan, that tax credit was the financial event that made the numbers work. Without it, a $35,000 system that generated a $10,500 tax credit in year one now generates nothing. The installers knew this was coming. Legislative risk had been discussed in the industry for 2 years before passage, but the sales force kept selling as if the credit was permanent, because their compensation depended on closed contracts, not on honest disclosures. Homeowners who signed contracts in the 18 months before the OBBBA passed, believing their tax credit was secured for new installations, are now discovering that their financial model was built on a legislative assumption that no longer applies going forward. Those who completed installation before December 31, 2025 can still carry forward any unused credit to future tax years. But those who signed expecting to install in 2026 or later received nothing. Here is what this looks like for a real family. A homeowner in Phoenix signs a 25-year power purchase agreement in 2022. The pitch is clean energy, energy independence, lower bills. They do not read the 47-page contract in detail because the salesman sat at their kitchen table for 2 hours and the numbers looked good on the chart. 3 years later, they accept a job offer in another city. They list the house. The title search comes back with a UCC1 from a solar company that filed for bankruptcy 6 months ago. Their real estate agent tells them the buyer's lender will not fund the loan with the encumbrance unresolved. To resolve it, they need to either pay $28,000 to buy out the remaining contract or find a buyer willing to assume a 22-year solar agreement with a 3.9% annual escalator on a system owned by a bankrupt entity whose service and warranty obligations are now being administered by a bankruptcy trustee. The house does not sell. They carry 2 mortgages for 8 months, while attorneys try to untangle the title. They eventually sell at a $40,000 discount to a cash buyer who factors the legal risk into the offer price. This is not a horror story from the fringes of the market. Real estate attorneys and title companies across the Sun Belt are seeing this scenario with increasing frequency among homeowners who signed solar contracts with companies that no longer exist. And the number of those companies is growing every quarter. According to Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, third-party owned systems, leases, and power purchase agreements represented 27% of residential solar installations in 2023, down from a peak of 60% in 2012. That decline reflects a market shift toward loan-based ownership. But the legacy contracts from the peak years of 2012 through 2018 represent millions of active agreements still attached to home titles. Add to that, the homeowners who financed purchases with solar loans built around a tax credit that no longer exists, and CFPB data from 2023 shows that 23% of residential solar was financed through leases and PPAs. An additional 58% used solar loans. Industry analysts tracking the residential solar market report that installer bankruptcies have accelerated since the OBBBA passage, and the pipeline of distressed contracts attached to insolvent companies represents a tidal risk exposure that the real estate market has not yet fully priced. So does that mean you should never put solar on your home? No, it means you need to stop thinking about solar as a product and to start thinking about it as a contract. And there are 3 specific situations where the contract still works in your favor. Situation 1, you own it outright with cash and you are staying. The only residential solar purchase that carries no contract risk is a cash purchase with full ownership, installed by a company with a verifiable track record, on a home you have no intention of selling for at least 12 years. In this scenario, there is no lien, there is no escalator clause, there is no lease counterparty. You own the equipment. The federal tax credit is gone, but the state incentives still exist in California, New York, Massachusetts, and several other states that have their own credit structures independent of federal policy. The math still works in high electricity cost estates. If you are paying 28 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the current range in California, New York, and Hawaii, a paid-off system generating 80% of your consumption delivers a real return over a 12-year horizon, even without the federal credit. The math does not work if you are paying 10 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which covers parts of the Southeast and large parts of the Midwest. In those states, solar has never been a financial product. It has only ever been an ideology purchase. Know your utility rate before you have a single conversation with the salesman. That one number tells you whether the math is possible before anyone draws a chart. The situation 2, you are buying a house with existing solar and negotiating accordingly. If you are purchasing a home with solar already installed, the panels are either a discount opportunity or a red flag, depending entirely on the contract structure. Ask for the full contract before making an offer. If it is a lease or PPA, get the remaining term, the annual escalator rate, and the buyout amount. Then hire a real estate attorney to review the UCC1 status and confirm the filing company is solvent. Budget the buyout cost into your offer price and negotiate accordingly. If the system is owned outright by the seller with no lien and no lease, you are buying a home with reduced operating costs. That is a genuine asset. Price it as one. The mistake buyers make is treating solar as a neutral feature. It is never neutral, but it is either a negotiating tool in your favor or a financial liability you are inheriting. The contract tells you which one it is before you commit. Situation 3. Community solar subscription with no home installation. This is the option the industry does not want to sell you because there is no equipment margin and no long-term contract to securitize. Community solar programs allow homeowners to subscribe to a share of a utility-scale solar array located off their property. You receive a credit on your utility bill based on your subscription share. You do not own equipment. There is no roof penetration. There is no UCC1 filing. There is no lien. The programs are available across dozens of estates through utilities and independent developers, with formal enabling legislation in place in more than 20 jurisdictions. But subscription terms are typically 12 to 36 months, not 25 years. If the developer goes bankrupt, your subscription ends and you return to standard utility rates. Your home title is untouched. The savings are smaller than a fully owned rooftop system, typically 5% to 15% off your utility bill, depending on the program and your state. But you are trading return for risk elimination, and in a market where installer bankruptcies are accelerating, that trade is worth making for most homeowners. The way to find legitimate programs is through your estate's Public Utility Commission website. Every state with an active community solar program lists certified developers through the PUC. If a company is not on that list, they are not a licensed community solar provider, or then the contract they are offering you is not a community solar subscription. It is something else. Before you sign anything solar related, run these 5 checks in order. First, search the company name plus bankruptcy and UCC lien before the salesman finishes his pitch. SunPower, Sunnova, Pink Energy, formerly Power Home Solar, and Titan Solar have all filed for bankruptcy since 2022. Second, pull your state's UCC filing database and search your property address before you sign. If a previous owner has a solar line on the title that was never resolved, you need to know before you are under contract. Third, ask for the full contract document before any site visit, any roof assessment, or any savings projection. A company that will not send you the contract before the sales appointment is a company that needs the sales environment to close the deal. That tells you everything about how they feel about the contract terms. Fourth, call your state's Public Utility Commission and ask for the current net metering rate in your zip code. Net metering, the rate at which your utility buys back excess power, has been cut in California and several other states in the last 2 years, and more states are actively reviewing it now. A savings model built on yesterday's net metering rate is not a savings model. It is a sales assumption. Fifth, and this is the rule that covers everything else, do not sign a 25-year contract with a company that has existed for less than 10 years. Do not put a lien on your home for equipment we'll never own. Do not let anyone securitize your roof. Here is what the residential solar industry does not want you to understand. The technology is real, the physics works, the sun does produce electricity, and that electricity has value. None of that is the problem. The problem is that a legitimate technology was captured by a financial services industry that learned it could securitize long-term residential contracts, bundle them into asset-backed securities, sell them to institutional investors, and collect fees at every step while the homeowner assumed all the risk. The panels on the roof are not the product. You are the product. Your 25-year payment stream is the product. Your home title is the collateral. And when the company that built its business on your contract goes bankrupt, the investors who bought those securitized contracts get paid through the bankruptcy process. You get a lien on your house and a phone number that no longer works. The families being trapped by this right now did not make foolish decisions. They listened to a pitch, they looked at a chart, and they signed a contract they believed was backed by a company that would exist in 25 years. They were not reckless. They were targeted. The sun is free. The contract never is.